Right boys, welcome to the 13th video on my channel. Today we're going to be ranking League One clubs for the 25-6 season by club size. When factoring how big these teams really are, we factor in fan base size and loyalty, trophy, stadium size, and history and legacy. League One has always been a funny old league. You've got teams who've won consecutive First Division titles, but you've also got teams who've barely played in the Football League. Speaking of which, at number 24, we've got Stevenage. Founded in 1976, Stevenage are one of the youngest clubs in the EFL, and they only joined the Football League in 2010. The Lamex is one of the smallest stadiums in League One. They average 3,000 to 4,000 fans a game, and they'd be one of the smallest clubs in League Two, never mind League One. At number 23, I've got AFC Wimbledon. And no, we're not considering that First Division era when you're known for having Vinnie Jones at the helm. If we were considering Wimbledon FC, you'd definitely be a lot higher, but unfortunately we have to settle for AFC Wimbledon, a club which was founded in 2002. Nothing more needs to be said. At number 22, we've got Burton Albion. The Pirelli's arguably the second most tin pot ground in the league. Very small fan base. They only entered the EFL in 2009. All things considered, they've done pretty well. They actually enjoyed a spell in the Championship between 2016 and 2018, which I find mental. But overachievement in the space of 10 years doesn't make you a big club, unfortunately. At number 21, we've got Exeter City. Exeter is a fan-owned club, admirable, but it also limits their spending power. Exeter have also never played in the top two tiers of English football and have spent most of their time in League Two or the Conference. And when you think of the biggest club in Devon, I'm sorry, but you think of Plymouth. At number 20, we've got Mansfield Town. A bit like Exeter, Mansfield have never played above the third tier, but still a little bit bigger in my eyes. While you could say Exeter have spent more seasons in the EFL, 89 seasons to be exact, and Mansfield only have an 83, I still think Mansfield are a bigger club. They've got a bigger stadium, I think they've got a better fan base, and overall they've just got more of a presence. At number 19, we've got Northampton Town. Why are Northampton Town the 19th biggest club in League One and bigger than the clubs I've just mentioned? In the 1965-66 season, Northampton Town had a spell in the First Division. I think they stabilised themselves more as a League One team than any of the teams I've just mentioned. And fun fact, the Cobblers have never actually dropped out the EFL, which I find insane. At number 18, we've got Wycombe Wanderers. Now this is a controversial one because some people would even argue that Wycombe should be even lower than they are. In their whole history, they've only ever had 32 seasons in the EFL. They were a semi-pro/non-league team until the 1990s. They were owned by a supporters trust up until recently, and the fan base is very small. But in my opinion, Wycombe edge out these teams due to a combination of recent success, stadium size, financial growth, and championship experience. At number 17, we've got Stockport. Stockport have a decent sized stadium, strong fan base, and decent historic stature. But decades of lower league football, a long non-league spell, and no top tier history limits their status. For starters, Edgeley Park is bigger than many League One stadiums. They've played over 100 EFL seasons, much more than the likes of Wycombe and AFC Wimbledon. Based in Greater Manchester, a massive footballing region. But I can't believe this, that Stockport spent 11 consecutive years in non-league between 2011 and 2022. That's in fact longer than any League One club outside of AFC Wimbledon. And during that time, it's fair to say the club stagnated and lost national relevance. At number 16, we've got Lincoln City. Lincoln City are a well-supported, stable, mid to lower League One club with a strong local backing, a redeveloped stadium, and a history of punching above their weight. But at the same time, very limited top-level history. Lincoln's attendances are very strong for a club of its size, regularly pulling in over 8,500 per game. Quite a bit of recent cup and league success. Won the EFL trophy in 2018. Reached the FA Cup quarter-finals in 2016-17 season as a non-league side. First non-league team to do it in over 100 years. Promoted to League One in 2019 and have stayed up comfortably, even making the 2021 playoff final. It's safe to say they're one of the best ranked clubs in the league. Definitely not one of the biggest, but definitely not in amongst the absolute smallest. On number 15, we've got Rotherham. By far the smallest Yorkshire-based club in League One. But that's not to say they're not a well-established EFL club, because they are. In recent seasons, Rotherham are sort of known as a yo-yo club between the Championship and League One. But if you look at the wide history, they've had no top-flight experience since the 1950s. No major league titles or cup runs. A very poor fan base as well, it's got to be said. And in summary, Rotherham are bigger than League One's non-league graduates and lower league lifers, but clearly smaller than the ex-Premier League clubs. At number 14, we've got Port Vale. Safe to say Port Vale are a historically well-established EFL club with a large stadium, strong local support, and a long-time Football League presence. But they spent most of their history in the low league divisions and have never really played in the top flight, which for me caps their club size at just below mid-table. At number 13, we've got Peterborough. Peterborough United are a strong League One club with regular Championship appearances, good football infrastructure, and a strong track record of talent development. Now I noticed that Peterborough have this sort of influence on lower league clubs, whereby they're trying to sort of replicate what Peterborough are doing by buying players from non-league and selling them on for big fees. You look at the likes of Ivan Toney, Kwame Poku, and even Ricky J. Jones. But even despite being one of League One's strongest footballing teams in recent years, Peterborough are not a big club in terms of size, history, or fan base. For starters, Peterborough have no top tier history, which easily puts them below plenty of size in League One. Relatively small fan base, the stadium is about average size for League One, and they only joined the Football League in 1960, which is much later than big clubs in this league. At number 12, we've got Donny Rovers, or otherwise known as the most bang average size club in League One. Donny and Peterborough are similar sized clubs, but Doncaster just edge it for me. Donny have spent more total years in the EFL than Peterborough. Historically, Donny's average attendances have been slightly higher and more consistent than Peterborough's. I'd say nationally, Doncaster are perceived as more of a a solid League One club with decent infrastructure, local pull and a professional setup. Donny has spent a total of 9 seasons in the second tier of English football, which is not amazing, but at the same time it's not crap. And that's the story of Doncaster's life at number 12. Oh, and they've also got a bang average stadium too. Anything else, mate? At number 11, we've got Plymouth Argyle. Plymouth are a decent sized club by League One standards, but because they've never played in the top flight and lack major honours or national recognition, they just fall short of clubs like Blackpool, Bradford City or Reading. Plymouth have one of the most interesting and in some ways frustrating histories in English football. They're one of the biggest clubs never to play in the top flight, with a long, proud Football League history, a massive catchment area and passionate support. And they've also got a very good stadium. Now moving on to the top 10 biggest clubs in League One this season. At number 10 we've got Leyton Orient. You are, mate. Now, Leyton Orient ranking as the 10th biggest club in League One might surprise some people at first glance. But when you look at the location, history and infrastructure, it becomes more understandable. Look, they're not a giant by any means. But in a League One full of small to medium-sized clubs, Orient just edged into the top 10. Orient have spent over 115 seasons in the Football League, and they've only spent 3 years in non-league in their entire history. They've played in the First Division, and they're a London club with a unique market. One of only a few professional clubs in central-ish London. While they face competition from the likes of West Ham, Spurs, etc., being in London means better access to sponsorships as commercial revenue, stronger media exposure, easier to attract players on loan or free transfers, and just a general high potential for growth. At number 9, we've got Bradford City, a huge stadium, thousands of loyal fans, a taste of the Premier League, but stuck in the lower leagues for over a decade. So why are they only the 9th biggest club in League One and not higher? Let's be clear, Bradford City are a big club. They've got one of the biggest stadiums in League One. Even in League Two, they were pulling something like 17 to 19,000 fans a game. That's Premier League level support in a 4th tier stadium. They're also FA Cup winners, and they've spent more than 110 seasons in the Football League. But size isn't just about stadium. In the last 20 years, Bradford have spent more time in League Two than League One. They've been at the Championship for over 2 decades, and apart from that 2013 League Cup run to the final, they've barely made a dent in English football recently. And when you look at the rest of League One, other clubs like Bolton, Barnsley or Wigan have been in the Premier League more recently, won major trophies and played at high level. Number 8, we've got Barnsley. Barnsley rank as 8th biggest club in League One because they strike a balance between a rich Football League history, top flight experience, a decent stadium and long-standing infrastructure. But they just fall short of the elite tier due to relatively limited success, smaller fan base compared to the very biggest, and recent inconsistency. Now I feel extremely harsh here because it's important to note Barnsley have spent more time in the second tier than almost any other English club, which essentially means they're a proper Championship club. They shouldn't be in this league. But then the same can be said for clubs like Huddersfield, who should be in the Prem. And the only reason they're not bigger than the top 7 clubs in League One like Bolton, Wigan, Blackpool, etc. is due to a limited trophy cabinet. Like, I can't believe we're comparing clubs in League One with how many First Division titles they've won, FA Cups they've won, etc. Yes, Barnsley have got a big ground, but other teams have got big grounds too. At number 7, we've got Blackpool. Blackpool are a seaside town club with more history and more top flight pedigree than most people realise. Blackpool have played 31 seasons in the top tier of English football. That's more than any other club in League One right now apart from Bolton and Huddersfield. And it doesn't end there. The legendary Stanley Matthews won the FA Cup with Blackpool in 1953 in a match literally known as the Matthews Final. The fan base is loyal and vocal. They stuck by the club through ownership battles, relegations and League Two football. And while Blackpool don't have the biggest ground or the loudest fan base, Blackpool's combination of history, stature and recent success makes them comfortably the 7th biggest club in League One. At number 6, we've got Luton Town. Luton are a historic club with serious pedigree. They spent 30 plus seasons in the top 2 tiers, including a strong First Division run in the 1980s. They even won the League Cup in 1988, beating Arsenal at Wembley, one of the few current League One clubs to win major silverware. The fan base is elite, quite literally sticking through thick and thin. The stadium's obviously not great, but that's about to change. At number 5, we've got Reading. Now, this is no doubt a very controversial take. When you compare Reading to other clubs I've just mentioned, they've only spent 20 seasons in the Championship and only 3 seasons in the Premier League. So why on earth have I put them in my top 5? While Reading don't have any major trophies, in the 2006-07 season, Reading finished 8th in the Premier League, which is the highest out of the teams we just mentioned. They also had the highest points record in the Championship up until the 24-5 season. But let's be honest, that's not what makes them a big club. But I was also lying when I said that Reading only had 20 seasons in the Championship. They've got 49 seasons in total in the second tier of English football, which is amongst the highest in the league. And between 2002 and 2023, Reading managed to at least stay in the Championship or above. And this long, consistent stay in the second tier is a major reason why Reading are considered a big club at League One level. Barnsley fans are coming for me. At number 4, we've got Wigan Athletic. Wigan may be in League One now, but their recent Premier League history, major trophy win, modern stadium and strong runs in the Championship make them a clear top 4 club in terms of overall size. Wigan had a sustained presence in the Premier League, most notably managing 8 consecutive seasons in the Premier League between 2005 and 2013, which is longer and more established than clubs like Luton, Blackpool and Barnsley. Wigan are also the only current League One club with a major trophy in the 21st century, winning the FA Cup in 2013. They've got a big stadium for League One. And if you're talking about overall club size, they're at least a mid-championship to high-end championship club. Now, by process of elimination, it doesn't take a genius to work out. We've got Huddersfield, Cardiff and Bolton left. And at number 3, we've got Cardiff. Let's start with the basics. Cardiff are a club with serious pedigree. They've spent over 50 seasons in the second tier, and more importantly, they've been in the top flight 17 times. But that's nothing. They're the only non-English team to win the FA Cup, winning it back in 1927, also reaching the final twice more. Cardiff City Stadium holds over 30,000, by far the largest stadium in League One right now. They've also won the Welsh Cup 22 times, albeit there's not much competition. But the most notable cup run was actually in Europe in 1964-65 season, in the European Cup Winners' Cup, where they've reached the quarter-finals. That's essentially the equivalent to reaching the quarter-finals of the Europa League. Cardiff are also the biggest club in Wales, it goes without saying. And from that, you can imagine how big the fan base is. Now moving on to the top 2 biggest clubs in League One this season. You have Huddersfield and Bolton, and then you have the rest of League One. Like, we've got the top 5 teams in League One, and then you've got Bolton and Huddersfield just like way ahead. They're head and shoulders above every other team in the league. But who is actually bigger out of the two? At number 2, we've got Huddersfield. This is a club that was doing incredible things over 100 years ago. In fact, Huddersfield were the first club in English football history to win 3 consecutive titles from 1924 to 1926. And this was a feat that wouldn't be matched until Arsenal did it in the 1930s. Huddersfield's trophy cabinet quite literally beats most of the current Premier Leagues. They've got 3 First Division titles and an FA Cup, and that's without considering they've been in 4 FA Cup finals in total. And we also cannot forget they've had 30 seasons in the top 5. Just considering that alone, Huddersfield should be nowhere near League One. And that's without considering how big the stadium is and how good the fan base is. But why does winning 3 First Division titles still not make them the biggest club in League One? Like, what more can they do? As historic as Huddersfield are, Bolton just edged them out when you look at the full picture. Bolton have had 73 top flight seasons, which is more than double Huddersfield's, 4 FA Cups and 2 Community Shields. In 2008, they also had a stint in the UEFA Cup, which is now known as the Champions League. Mental. I'd also say they've got a slightly better fan base than Huddersfield and obviously a bigger stadium. Don't get me wrong, 2 absolutely amazing CVs for League One, but Bolton just edge it. But anyway, yeah boys, I'm going to end the video there. Let me know how you'd rearrange a few of these clubs. I do hope you somewhat enjoyed the video. But yeah, see you in the next one.